So this has been released March. Actually, I just haven't spoken about it yet. But there's a lot of interesting, and the one that this version that I am going to present to you, this is what they presented to the public. But usually they have a separate one that they release to all the studios and the labels. So that I think I will reserve to the members only. But this one has enough for us to talk about. It's really very interesting. Okay. um okay, where was that? All right, so that's the first one. So they said that between 1999 to 2024 the music industry has grown, and we have made a huge comeback, especially after the pandemic. So from 21.9 billion, this is in billions, from 21.9 billion in 1999, the music industry is now worth 29.6 billion. All right. Okay, so 1999 and then 2024, that's a difference of 8.1, I guess, or less, 7 point something billion, right? So they're saying that it actually grew. All right. So this is what I'm talking about when I say you always have to dig deeper when they are releasing reports like this, right? Because on the onset, it does feel like it actually grew because from 21.9 to 29.8, that seems like a huge jump. But the thing is that remember, they're talking about monetary terms. So this is in dollars, US dollars. So they said from 21.8 billion to 29.6 billion. That's a huge jump. The thing is that there is inflation. So I don't think that is growth in any shape or form. So I trained my AI to do the computation for inflation. So this is the computation that, that I used to be able to compute how much 29.6 billion is in 1999 terms. So I just want to explain this very, very clearly. If you have $1 in 1999, and I'm using those years because those are the years that were used by the report. That was the first time when they computed the value of the music industry. So okay, so 21.9, they said that it was worth 21.9 back in 1999. All right. So my baseline is 1999. Now, for 29.8, I want to know how much is 29.8 worth back in 1999. If I have $1 in 1999, I was able to buy, let's just say, I was able to buy a bike, lunch, a burger, fries, and soda for $1 back in 1999. I'm just okay. So now in 2024, what will that $1 be able to buy? Gums, probably, right? If at all. So that is what I'm trying to compute. How much is the 29.8 billion in 1999 terms? So for me to be able to do that, I need to compute inflation because that's how I can come up with um, the value. That's how I will know how much that 29.6 is in terms of value. Okay. All right. So here is the formula that I use. So I trained AI, I trained my chat GPT to do the computation. So I told him how to compute it. So now moving forward, when I ask him to compute, he will be able to do it. So my AI is a guy because I'm referring to him as a he. Okay, so that is my calculation, and as you can see, it's 15.3. It's telling me that 29.6 billion now is only worth 15.3 billion back into 1999. That is not growth because if you would remember back in 1999, the music industry was worth 21.8 billion. So that is not growth. And always have to adjust it to inflation. Even when people are releasing, like for example, someone says, "Oh, just in concerts, for example, they earned 300 million in concerts in 2025, and then another group earned 250 million back in 1999. So the question is, okay, adjust your 300 million, adjust your, yeah, let's just say adjust your 300 million to inflation. Now, the other thing that you need to consider is that when I plug my formula into Chat GPT so that he can automatically compute it for me, he's going to pull the official numbers of the government, meaning the government releases the inflation on a monthly basis, if you would remember, right? And then there's the yearly inflation. Okay, so they would release that on a monthly and then yearly. So he would take that because that's the official source. And I've mentioned this before, many times before, that 90 that inflation is actually manipulated to appear lower, but it's actually higher. And personally, and when you're computing, for example, your savings, your retirement, or whatever, you have to multiply what the government is telling you by at least three, but I would argue four times. So if the government tells you inflation is 3%, multiply it by three. But usually I multiply by four. So if the government tells me it's 3%, I would go, nah, it's 12. So this computation is even lower. Sorry, the inflation that he computed is even lower. So most likely the 15.3 billion is what? Probably, I don't know, like 11 billion. So it's much worse than it was in 1999. So it is smoke and mirrors just because they want to feel good about themselves. I don't know why. They're lying to themselves. Don't think about the numbers, think about the value. Even when you are making any sort of investments or whatever, think about the value. One of the reasons many founders or many uh, startup employees actually become rich is that they forego getting a high salary and go for equity or stocks or shares within the company, because a share will go up with the company, right? So if you have 100 share now and it's worth $10 per share, in the future, that $10 is going to be worth $100, as opposed to getting, for example, 100,000 a year. Your 100,000, even if you saved 50% of that in 10 years, that's going to devalue. So always inflation. Okay, so the music industry, in fact, didn't grow. It shrank to 15.3 billion if we use the computation using the inflation rate that the government is providing us. Okay, now they're saying that, so this is where the revenue is coming from. So this big chunk, the outer blue circle that or arc that you're seeing, that is streaming. And 51%, more than 51% is coming from 51% of the revenue. They're coming from paid streaming. And then 17%, a little over 17% is free streaming. So there are very few streaming sites that are giving it for free, one of which is Spotify, and then the other is YouTube, like YouTube. So those are free ones. I don't think Tidal, I don't think Amazon actually has free streaming. Okay. And then 9.7% performance rights. This is not the income from the concert itself. If you are going to perform, for example, or for a TV show, this is the best example actually, for a TV show, a variety show, many of these variety shows would use music or songs of acts that are not a part of the show. So we have heard many times songs of BTS getting played in a TV show, in a variety show. They actually paid royalty to BTS to be able to use that. Okay, so there are different arrangements of that. Certain companies, for a TV show, for example, or a network, they would usually have a blanket deal, meaning they would pay. This is just an example. Okay, I'm going to be paying you $10,000 a month, and I will be able to use any kind of music that I want to for my show or for whatever. So, and then they just track whatever song they used in their show, and whoever has rights over that gets paid. So okay, that's performance rights. And then sync rights, synchronization or sync rights, that is the use of the song for an OST. So it could be an OST for a TV show, OST for a movie, OST for a game, or OST for an ad, for a TV ad or radio ad. If they used your song, that's sync rights. And up until I would say before the pandemic, I was actually going to be working for a singer who wanted to market her music for syncs because she was getting, just based on her income, that's majority of her hit or of her income, it was coming from syncs. And so she wanted to come up with a marketing plan in order to get more syncs and stuff like that. And then the pandemic happened, so that didn't push through. So but they earn a lot of money, but it also depends on what who is actually going to be using your music, right? Like the most famous is the rights, the song that was used for Eternals, Marvel. So they use Friends because Jimin got a load of money for that because he was this composer, he was a producer, and half the performer. And then it's Marvel, it is international release, so the rate is different. So usually how it goes is that they pay off a certain amount right off. So for example, okay, Jimin, here is, this is just an example. Here is $100,000, and then once they recuperate that, they start paying you royalties for future releases or future plays. Okay, so that syncs. And then physicals would be CDs, vinyls, albums in whatever shape or form. And then 2.8 from download. So digital download. Okay. Now, these are the top 10 because someone was asking about this, like who are the top 10? So you still have USA, that's number 1. You still have UK, Japan for number 2. Those are very the top 5 is actually consistent. Sorry, the top 4, they're consistent. USA, Japan, UK, Germany, China, France, South Korea, Canada, Brazil, and Mexico is a new entry. I think they kicked out. So they said that for downloads and other digital products, it actually went down 7.7%, negative 7.7%. So there are less and less people that are downloading the song um to their devices. I'm not surprised because if you can, number one, because internet is way better now than it was like 5 years ago. So I wouldn't expect people to be downloading them in their songs if they can just stream anytime. So it doesn't occupy, a lot of people have a lot of apps on their phone. They use it as a camera, they use it for videos and pictures and whatever. So the memory space is very valuable to them. So why download it if you can just play it? And then the other thing is that fans are actually more aware that streaming it from the streaming platform and not from your phone is going to help your favorite act to stream, to get their charts, to improve their charts. So more people are actually consciously streaming rather than downloading that. Okay. The ones that are downloading are just really fans like us, that just because we want to help the group to chart, but still we would stream from the platform. Okay, now in terms of physicals, it also went down, so less people are actually buying their albums, CDs, vinyls. Negative 3.1%. However, so this is a preview of what I will be presenting to the members only live stream, but there is a huge movement on the vinyl side because they seem to be recovering, and I'm happy for the smaller mom and pop um, record shops, record stores, because it means foot traffic to their website, to their store. So people are actually coming in. They're coming in to actually buy vinyls. I would recommend you watch that interview that I did with Neil. So Neil is a long time record industry executive before actually putting up his own record store. And he said that one of the surprising things that has been happening to their store in the last 2, 3 years is the increase of Gen Z people coming into their store to buy. And that actually surprised him because that used to, Gen Z is not your physical album person. But people are coming in and they're looking to buy vinyls. A lot of them are looking to buy vinyls. And because their store actually has, if you go to their store, for anybody of you in Burbank, I would recommend you go to their store. The address, I think I mentioned, or at least the website I mentioned, I pasted it in the YouTube episode in the description box. But he said that one of the things that he has been observing is that young people are actually testing, they're listening to the vinyl in their store because they have a listening section. There's a section there where you can put the vinyl and you can listen to that. And it's an entirely different experience for them. But just one story that I found very, very funny is that he said that many of these young people, especially in the beginning when they started coming in, he was very, very surprised on how people would actually start talking to no one and nothing as if they're talking to an app. So they would come in and they would just talk. They're not, how we used to like look for someone to talk to, right? Like, oh, hi, do you work here? And if they say yes, so I'm looking for this and blah, blah, blah. So he said that Gen Z people would come in, look around, and just talk. He would have to actually approach them and they're like, hi, hey, in this store there's an actual human being and you can actually talk to me because I'm a human being and I'll answer your question. But it was so funny to me. And he said, no, I'm not exaggerating. That's really how they do it. They would just talk, expecting that there's an AI that would answer them in the store. Okay. So, but physical is down. The only reason it's not down a whole lot is because they're being saved by vinyl. So there's a whole new study on this. There's a whole new like prediction in this, and I will talk about that in the for members only live stream. Okay, next is the sync. It's up 6.4%. And this is very easy to understand because there's a lot of content creators nowadays, right? And content creation is not limited to the big studios. Even YouTubers would actually go out of their way to use songs of BTS, of whatever. Okay. And so those, for example, if I use the song of BTS, I pay sync royalties to them. I pay them. So for YouTube, they have an AI, a robot that actually determines, okay, you're using dope of BTS. I'm sorry, but the income goes to BTS. So outside of the big companies, the Universal, the MGM of this world, you have smaller creators, and we're all paying syncs to these people whenever we use their tracks. So it is understandable why it is up 6.4%. Okay. Okay. For streaming, it grew at a faster rate than any other formats, and they said that it grew 7.3%. I actually was a little surprised that it's not more, but also not surprised because they grew tremendously fast during the pandemic. Because during the pandemic, people didn't have anything to do. They just started subscribing to, to platforms. So I'm not really surprised that it grew just 7.3%. But also, to a certain extent, I was expecting it was going to grow even faster because there's a lot more acts that are debuting, because there's a lot more marketing happening, more money is being thrown for marketing and for advertising. I thought people are going to start discovering more artists and people are going to start actually subscribing for them. Okay. Hi, Juveline. All right. So by region, across the board, across all regions, they all grew. So for USA and Canada, North America, that's 2.1% growth, but Latin America grew 22.5%. They are the fastest growing market, and that gives you an idea why Hyde decided to invest in Latin America, because this is where the future is. And I've also mentioned before that if you are putting up a business and you really want to grow, you have to put up a business for the future, not for the present. Right? Okay. So that is the explanation why they expanded to Latin America. And then you have Europe, 8.3%, MENA, 22.8%, Asia, 1.3%, Australia, 6.4%, and Sub-Saharan Africa, 22.6%. So the smaller markets, there it's very, very understandable why they are growing that fast. So okay, so some of the things that they are concentrating on is support for music's competitive marketplace. And they are saying this is specifically pertains to the increased royalties of artists. So I've mentioned to you before that if you kind of want to understand how much, or at least get an idea, a broad idea on how much an artist is actually going to make, I said go 30%. Because that's usually how much they, just because as I've said, I've been in the industry for a while, that's how they kind of, that's how much they end up with. And the first time I've actually heard somebody talk about this from the industry was Eminem. He said in in an interview probably 20 pounds ago, my 20 pounds, 20 pounds ago, he said that, you know, he was looking at his statement, his finances, and he realized that at the end of the day, he goes home with 30% of the total amount of money that he is earning. And so at first he didn't like that, but also he later on realized, but if it wasn't for the 70%, I won't have the 30%. So he's kind of okay. Later on he kind of realized, okay, that's how it goes. Now they're saying, now this is another affirmation of that. IFPI themselves said that artists are now getting 34.8% or more. So it's a range, but this is their average, 34%. So it could be some acts may be getting 40%, they may be getting 45%, but by the average, it is 34.8%. And there are some acts that are of course getting way less. So they said that it is an increase. That is one of the biggest changes that happened in 2024. One of the things that they learned is that there are more and more revenue coming in through gaming. So, and that is not just because games are actually syncing or using the songs for their games, but that there are more games that are commissioning artists to write songs for them. That's one. Second, that's that within the game itself, and remember this, within the game itself, they actually, music is becoming a part of the experience. And so when people go on to play games, music is a part of it. So they'll hear a song, they'll play it while they are playing the game, or that there is a purchase involved in the song, you know, stuff like that. But it is very much integrated in the gaming industry that they are anticipating it's going to double in the next 5 years. So again, a lot of people are actually um criticized both SM Entertainment, because SM is actually went heavy on gaming, and Hybe for investing heavy on the metaverse, on gaming. So those two agencies actually got it right. They are right that they were there early. So I think SM was actually there first before Hybe, because Hybe is a new company. So, but even before, I remember Hisuman talking about investing in gaming companies back when TVXQ, I think, did their second comeback after the lawsuit, after the lawsuit was settled. So, and people like they didn't understand that. Even the ESPA concept of the metaverse, they don't understand. But now it's proving that they got it right. They got it right. Okay. Next. Shaping a positive future for AI and music. This, they spent about three sections on AI. Okay. So essentially what they're trying to say in this research is that there's nothing they can do to stop AI, and that they don't like it, but it is inevitable. And so they decided that, or labels are actually starting to work with AI rather than work against AI. Okay. I remember when all this talks about AI and the metaverse and NFTs and the blockchain, all of these things, a lot, many were actually hating on it. But again, people are being proven right. Even the music industry is saying it's inevitable. If we fight this, we're going to lose. So we're going to work with it. Okay. So they're saying that they are going to start working around AI. And these are some of the things that they are going to start doing. One is that they are harnessing the power of AI to give a legend his voice back. And so one of the examples that they used is John Lennon. So for the Beatles, if you would remember, they released a song and they used AI to isolate the voice of John Lennon from a group recording. So back in the 60s, late 50s, early 60s, when they were still doing their recording, it was very different from how we're doing it today, in that the vocals are not isolated per person. So when they record, they'll be in the studio, they'll be playing, and everything is recorded at the same time. So you have one audio file for all four members. So that's just an example. Okay. So what they did is that they used AI in order to isolate the voice of John Lennon and then pluck that in the new recording of the same song. They just re-recorded it um, by Ringo Starr and Paul McCartney. Okay. So that's one of the uses that they have found for AI. Now it is easier for them to finish work, to actually maximize the work of artists that are no longer with us. Because that I have no problem with in terms of the use of AI, because they did not copy the voice of John Lennon, right? They only used AI in order to isolate his voice and then put it in a new recording. I'm fine with that. That's still John Lennon's voice. Sure, they might have done auto tune or whatever. That's fine. We've been using auto tune, which is also AI, for the longest time. So I have no problem with that. Okay, so they're saying that that's one use of AI. Now, other things is that they are going to start working with legislators, with the government, with other regulators to make sure that the legislations or laws are there or regulations are there to protect the interest of musicians against those that will abuse the power of AI. AI or any kind of technology is agnostic. It is not bad and it isn't good either. It is as bad if as you make it to be and as good as you make it to be. So they're just saying that we're going to make sure that there are legislations that will prohibit people to use AI for things that the original singer or the original artist does not permit. So, for example, I'm sure that you have heard of it. There's a lot of companies out there that are using voices, are using data, are using your own playlist or whatever you do to train their AI. And sometimes they ask for your permission. Sometimes they do it without you knowing. Okay. So they want to make sure that does not happen. That if there is a company that is going to use, for example, the voice of the Weekend and Peso Pluma to train their AI, they want to make sure that Peso Pluma and the Weekend will know about it, will know the conditions, what it's going to be used for, and will agree to it. Okay. So one of the things that they mentioned is that many of these AI companies are they're studying the hits that are the hit songs that certain artists are were able to release, that certain artists released. So they're teaching their AI what are the components of those songs that made it a hit, so that they can tell the AI to write more of those songs. Okay, so they don't want that to happen, or if that happens they want to make sure that the conditions are right or whatever. Because one of the things that people think is going to happen is that, okay, so they, for example, they train their AI on the hits of Peso Pluma and The Weeknd and Benson Boone and Adele. Okay, and then they're just simply going to ask AI, okay, write a hit. Use the components of this song and write a hit. Give me 10. And then AI is just going to pump those 10 hits. That could very well happen. Okay. But most likely what's going to happen is that the labels are going to say, okay, write me a hit. Okay, so the AI is going to they're going to come up with those 10 hits. They're going to get a musician and say, okay, translate this, like revise certain parts of it, blah blah blah. And then we'll ask one singer to release it. And so they have full deniability that everything they used to make that song is AI, because a human being actually went down and changed some things. That's cheating, because at the end of it, still AI that used it. Now it could still be a hit. But we don't want that to happen, and the music industry don't want that to happen as well, because you are going to, at the end of the day, you are going to minimize the value of art. Policymakers must require AI developers to maintain this and disclose records. Now, a lot of people think that this is a long shot, because at the end of the day, I can just do whatever it is that I want to do in my bedroom, right? So if I want to train, if I have an AI, I can actually write my own AI, have my own program, write my own AI program, and then just get all of this, like train my own AI using the hits of Adele and Peso Pluma and Benson Boone, and then have my AI write the hits and release it. So that's probably true. That can still happen. But at the end of the day, I will still be using platforms that are owned by big corporations. And if these big corporations are compelled by the court, or even if they're a small corporation, if they are compelled by the court to release their data, then they will have no choice. So that's what they are trying to safeguard. They want to make sure that any company out there, any legal entity out there, may be compelled by the court to disclose their data so that anybody can be held liable. Recording okay, they're powering global cultures and economies. Essentially what they're saying here is that they're actually investing more on local economies and local regions or local markets. So for example, Universal Music, they're partnering with local labels in India, in the Philippines, in Indonesia, and they are producing more and more local hits and local artists. That's what they mean. So it seems that the global and the North American industry, the NA music industry, is coming into terms with the fact that in Asia, especially, well, a lot of parts of the world, we're not necessarily following the trend of the US. Now, if they want a piece of our business here in the business in Asia, then they're just going to have to make sure that they are invested in those countries. And that's what they are doing. They're partnering or buying into companies in Asia in order to get a piece of that business. The top artist for 2024 is still Taylor Swift. So this is based on album sales, streams, and yeah, album sales and streams, and then the sale and digital sales as well. So, and then number two is Drake. And then the gap between two and three is even wider, but it is 17. They are the third in terms of consumption. Billie Eilish or Eilish, and then Stray Kids number five, Zach Bryan for number six, The Weeknd for number seven, Eminem for number eight. He only released one album. Number nine for Kendrick Lamar, and Sabrina Carpenter for the 10th. In terms of this, so those are general artists. So this is artists, the top artists. But this is top singles for 2024. It was Benson Boone's Beautiful Things. And then number two is, I don't know if you've actually listened to that song. If you haven't, please listen to it. It's really good. Sabrina Carpenter, Lose Control, Teddy Swiss, Birds of a Feather, Billie Eilish or Eilish. How does she pronounce it? A Bar Song Tipsy by Shabuzi. Too Swift by Hosier. I Had Some Help by Post Malone, Kendrick Lamar, Not Like Us, Cruel Summer, Taylor Swift, and then Stick Season by Noah Kahan. And then for albums, of course, Taylor is number one. Hit Me Hard and Soft, Short and Sweet, Romance Untold, SOS, Spill the Feels. This is 17. Number six, Once Upon a Time. Are you seeing this? Okay. And then right here, 17 is right here. Again, 17. Sixth Season by Noah Kahan, and then 8 by Stray Kids. So that is your 10. Okay. Where do they find these artists? I don't like much current music. You would love to see Sabrina with JK? Carol said that she would love to see Sabrina with JK.